The last breath begins. Commander Jake stood alone on the surface of a dying planet. The sky was dark, filled with angry, swirling clouds of poisonous gas. Each breath Jake took came with a warning beep from the small machine on his chest, his biofilter. It was the only thing keeping him alive. Now, it was down to just 1%. A soft female voice in his helmet kept repeating, "Warning, biofilter critical, 1% remaining. Seek clean air immediately." But there was no clean air here. Only death waited outside the thin walls of Jake's spacesuit. He looked around, searching the broken landscape. Once this planet had been full of life. The ground was cracked and dry. Skeletons of alien trees reached up like bony fingers, and old metal towers leaned at odd angles. Jake's boots left deep marks in the dusty soil as he walked, each step heavy, each breath more difficult than the last. He wiped the fog from his visor. In the distance, he could see the remains of a crashed shuttle. It was his only hope. The rescue team he had been sent to find, maybe they had made it there. Maybe there was still time. Jake's mind raced. He thought about his home back on Earth, about his wife and his little daughter. He promised them he would come back safe. But now, with the biofilter at 1%, it was hard to believe that promise. He could almost hear his daughter's voice. "Be brave, Daddy." Suddenly, his comlink cracked to life with a static noise. Jake stopped walking, startled. The rescue team's channel had been silent for hours. Maybe this was them. He pressed the button on his wrist. "This is Commander Jake Barnes. Is anyone out there? Please respond." At first, there was nothing. Just the cold wind blowing across the dead planet. Jake's heart pounded. Then a new sound came through, something he had never heard before. It was a voice, but not a human voice. It sounded strange and broken, like someone was learning to speak. The words were slow, heavy, and full of fear. "Help, I am hurt." Jake felt his blood run cold. He checked his radio again. The signal was weak, and the language was broken English, with a strange accent. It could only mean one thing. This was not one of his team. This was an alien. He took a step back, glancing at the sky. Aliens were supposed to be enemies. This planet had been at war for years. Jake had been trained to fight, not to rescue aliens. He remembered stories from the base. Aliens could be dangerous, even when hurt. But the voice came again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Please help me." Jake looked at the biofilter on his chest. 0.9% left. He had maybe 5 minutes before the air would turn to poison. The smart thing would be to run to the crashed shuttle, try to find clean air, and forget the alien. He had never even seen one up close. No one back home would blame him. But then he heard another sound, a small gasp, followed by a cough. The alien was close. Maybe just behind the next hill. Maybe dying, just like Jake. He thought about the rules he had learned in training. No one left behind. That had always meant humans, not aliens. But still, could he really leave someone to die, even if they were different? He moved forward, careful, but curious. His boots crunched on the hard ground. The voice on the radio grew clearer. "Here, I am here." Crept over a small ridge. His heart raced as he saw a figure lying in the dust. It was taller than any human, with blue skin and bright, glowing eyes. The alien wore a suit like his, but it was torn and covered in strange green blood. For a moment, both Jake and the alien stared at each other. Fear and confusion filled the air between them. The alien tried to crawl away, but it was too weak. Jake raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I want to help," Jake said, voice shaking. The alien looked at him with wide eyes, then coughed again. Jake noticed the alien's own biofilter blinking red just like his. The alien's time. was running out to dot the warning voice spoke in Jake's helmet again. Biofilter at 0.8%. Seek shelter. Jake knew he had to act fast. He reached into his pack for a medical kit, but he hesitated. Should he waste precious seconds on this alien? Or should he save himself? The alien whispered, "Please." In that moment, Jake made his choice. He kneeled beside the alien, offering the small oxygen mask from his kit. The alien looked surprised but accepted it with trembling hands. As Jake helped, he felt his own breath growing shorter. The world began to spin. Would he regret this choice? Or was this the moment that would change everything? The screen faded, too black with the biofilter's warning echoing in the silence. Asterisk, the first thing Jake noticed was the alien's eyes bright blue, glowing even in the planet's dusty air. The world around Jake seemed to blur and fade as he stared at this strange being on the ground. For a split second, everything went quiet. The warning beeps in Jake's helmet faded into the background. It felt like time itself had stopped. A cold wind picked up, blowing fine sand and swirling circles around them. It was almost like the planet was watching, holding its breath. Jake blinked, snapped back to reality by the sound of the alien coughing, a dry, painful sound. Almost human, but not quite. The alien was trying to push itself away, dragging its body across the cracked ground, but every movement looked difficult and painful. One arm hung at a strange angle. Jake could see blood thick and green oozing from a wound on its side. The alien suit was torn and sparking, just like Jake's fear. Jake wanted to help, but he also remembered every warning his commanders had given him. Don't trust the enemy. They can trick you. They can kill you. But in this moment, the alien didn't look like an enemy. It looked lost and scared. It looked like someone who didn't want to die alone. Jake took a slow breath, the air heavy and dirty, and knelt down, hands open to show he had no weapon in them. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice low but steady. The alien watched him, those blue eyes wide and filled with something that looked like hope and fear mixed together. Its lips trembled as it tried to speak. "You, human," the alien whispered. Its English was rough and broken, but the question was clear. Jake nodded. "Yes, I'm human. My name is Jake." The alien's breathing grew quicker. Jake. It struggled to remember the word. Jake, Zarin. For a second, Jake and Zarin just stared at each other. Two survivors, both running out of time. Jake felt a strange connection, feeling he could not explain. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the way Zarin said his name, like it meant something. Jake checked his biofilter again. Only 0.7% left. He could barely think, but he knew he had to do something fast. He looked at the wound on Zarin's side. It was bad. Alien skin was thicker than human skin, but the tear was deep. Jake tried to remember his medical training, but this was nothing like patching up a soldier back on Earth. He reached for his med kit, took out a small foam spray, and showed it to Zarin. "Help?" Jake asked, raising his eyebrows. Zarin nodded, eyes closing in pain. Jake sprayed the foam onto the wound. Instantly, it bubbled and hissed. Zarin shuddered, but then his breathing slowed. "Thank you," Zarin whispered. Jake forced a smile. "You'd do the same for me, right?" Zarin didn't answer, but his eyes softened. Suddenly, both their radios crackled with static. A harsh, metallic voice echoed through the dust, cold and unfriendly. It was not human. It was not Zarin. It was someone else. Unit 13, respond. Intruder detected. Sector 7, prepare for elimination. Jake froze. He realized they were not alone. Someone or something was watching them. Enemy drones, patrols. He didn't know, But he did know one thing. They had to move. Jake quickly checked his map. The old bunker was still half a kilometer away. If they could make it there, maybe they could survive. He reached out his hand to Zarin. "Can you walk?" Zarin shook his head. Too weak. Jake knew what he had to do. He pulled Zarin's arm over his shoulder and tried to stand, feeling the full weight of the alien. It was heavier than it looked. Each step was slow, painful. Jake's vision blurred as the last drops of clean air ran through his biofilter. Zarin did his best to help, but his legs dragged behind. The wind howled louder. The sky above flashed with red warning lights. Somewhere behind them, Jake heard the sound of machines moving, hunting, searching. There was no time to rest, but even as the danger grew, Jake kept moving. He looked at Zarin and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll get you to safety. I promise." Zarin tried to smile. In that moment, Jake knew he had made the right choice. They disappeared into the dust. Two strangers, running from death together. A burning light flashed in Jake's mind, a memory from his training, sharp as the alarm in his helmet. No one left behind, the commander's voice echoed, hard and clear. But now, as he dragged Zarin across the dead ground, that lesson felt heavier than ever. Jake's knees buckled under Zarin's weight. Every breath was a battle. Every heartbeat sounded like a countdown. The biofilter's numbers ticked down to 0.6%. His lungs begged for air. His vision flickered with white spots. Zeran, limp and silent, hung from Jake's shoulder. Okay. For a split second, Jake wondered, would it be easier to let go? Just leave this alien, run to the bunker, and maybe survive. But something stopped him. Suddenly, a tiny light on Zarin's chest started blinking. Jake leaned closer and saw a small device strapped to the alien's suit, a data chip, glowing with a strange green symbol. The chip pulsed, weak but alive. Zarin's eyes fluttered open. He forced out the words, slow and strained. "Take this bunker, open, code, inside." Jake stared at the chip. His heart raced. Did Zarin just say this chip would unlock the bunker's door? Did he mean Jake could get inside, maybe even save himself? He just took the chip and left the alien behind. He closed his eyes, mind racing. A new sound cut through the silence. A distant thump, then a mechanical screech. Enemy patrols. Machines hunting across the wasteland, looking for any sign of life. If they found him and Zarin, it would be over. Jake crouched low, forcing his tired brain to think. The smart move was clear. Take the chip, run to the bunker, save himself. Zarin was too weak, maybe already dying. No one would ever know what he did out here. He could tell himself it was war. It was survival. But Jake glanced down at Zarin, who watched him with hopeful, fading eyes. The alien had risked sharing the code. He had trusted Jake, a stranger, maybe even an enemy. Jake's own voice, dry and rough, came out before he could stop himself. "Why trust me? Why not just use the chip yourself?" Zarin coughed, a weak smile on his face. Too weak, only. Together, Jake felt a shiver go through him. Only together. That was the answer. He remembered his daughter's voice again, warm and clear. "Be brave, Daddy." The filter's alarm screamed, louder now, 0.4%. He had maybe 2 minutes of clean air left. His legs shook, but his mind cleared. There was only one real choice. He slung Zarin's arm tighter over his shoulder, pocketed the data chip, and stood up. The enemy machines were closer now. He could hear them scanning, metal legs thudding through the dust. Jake stumbled forward, half dragging, half carrying Zarin. Each step felt impossible. The bunker was just visible through the haze of dark. Shape on the horizon, hope and danger in one place. The enemy searchlights swept the ground behind him. Jake pressed onward, sweat dripping inside his suit, each breath a raw gasp. He whispered to Zarin, "Hang on, we're almost there." Zarin's fingers tightened weakly on Jake's suit. Hume. The last words barely reached. Jake's ears before his filter ticked to 0.2%. As they moved, the earth shook behind them. A patrol had spotted their trail. Lasers sliced through the air, missing them by inches. Jake pushed harder, adrenaline kicking in. His vision narrowed, but the bunker door was close. Now so close he could see the faded letters scratched into the metal. A final burst of energy. Jake reached the door, slammed his palm onto the scanner, and fumbled for the chip. Zarin's hand trembled as Jake placed it on the sensor. For a long second, nothing happened. The enemy was nearly upon them. Then, a soft chime. The door slid open just enough for one person to squeeze through. Jake made the hardest choice. He shoved Zarin inside first. Just as the world behind him filled with enemy light, he turned, braced himself, and prepared to face the machines whatever happened next. The world outside the bunker door exploded with chaos. Jake heard the enemy machines closing in. Their metal feet pounded the ground, sending vibrations through his boots. Lasers hissed past, burning holes in the dirt, lighting up the poisonous air with red and blue flashes. But inside the bunker, it was a different world. Darkness, silence. The air was thick and heavy. Jake pulled Zarin through the narrow opening, then slammed the door shut behind them. The metal hissed as it sealed. The outside noises vanished like someone turned off the world with a single switch. Jake leaned back against the door, gasping for air. The alarm in his helmet kept screaming, "Biofilter at 0.1%. Immediate danger." His lungs felt like fire. Black dots danced in front of his eyes. He knew he only had seconds. He turned, searching the shadowy room. His flashlight flickered on, painting the bunker walls with a ghostly white beam. Old crates, broken screens, and dust floated everywhere. The air smelled musty, not fresh but better than outside. Jake dropped to his knees, coughing. Zarin lay beside him, breathing raggedly. Jake forced himself to crawl forward, searching for anything: an air tank, a filter, a miracle. His glove brushed against a panel on the wall. Symbols, half broken, glowed faintly. Jake remembered Zarin's chip, lumped carringmongers. He placed the chip into a slot. The panel lit up, soft blue light spilling across the floor. System. Online, a robotic voice whispered. Suddenly, vents opened with a quiet sigh. Clean air flooded into the room. Jake ripped off his helmet, sucking in a shaky, deep breath. The relief was so powerful, he almost cried. He quickly turned to Zarin, who was barely moving. Jake gently removed the alien's cracked helmet and pressed his own oxygen mask to Zarin's mouth. Zarin took a slow, grateful breath, blinking at Jake through blurry eyes. A soft rumble echoed above. The enemy machines were searching the area. Jake froze, listening. Would they find the bunker? Would the door hold? Jake crawled to the door's controls. The system screen flickered. Manual lockdown. 10 minutes remaining. Enemies detected. They were safe. For now, Jake slumped against the wall, every muscle aching. He watched Zarin breathe easier, some color returning to the alien's face. In this quiet moment, Jake realized how close he'd come to death, not just from the planet's poison, but from his own choices. The silence was broken by a sharp crackle in the bunker's old speaker system. A voice unfamiliar and robotic filled the room. "You are surrounded. Exit and surrender, or be destroyed." Jake's heart pounded. The enemy had found them. Time was running out. He crawled back to Zarin. The alien looked at him, fear and Hope fighting in those bright blue eyes. Jake whispered, "We have 10 minutes before they break in." "Is there another way out?" Sarah nodded weakly, pointing to a dark hallway at the back of the bunker. "Escape, tunnel. But, locked, need. Both are codes." Jake's mind raced. He understood. Only by working together, human and alien could. They open the tunnel and survive. He glanced at the panel near the tunnel door. 2 handprints, one human, one alien, were etched in the metal. They had to move fast. Outside, the machines hammered on the main door, metal echoing through the bunker like thunder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jake helped Zarin to his feet, supporting him as they stumbled to the tunnel entrance. The panel flickered. Jake pressed his hand to the first print. Zarin pressed his to the second. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a heavy click, the tunnel door slid open, revealing a narrow path into darkness. Jake looked at Zarin, determination burning in his tired eyes. "Let's go. We're not finished yet." Together, they disappeared into the unknown, chased by enemies and running out of time. It felt like the world was collapsing behind them. The echo of metal fists slamming on the bunker door followed Jake and Zarin as they stumbled down the narrow tunnel. Every step sent pain shooting up Jake's legs. He could barely see the darkness pressed close, broken only by the flickering light from Zarin's chest plate. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, louder than the alarms. His biofilter was dead. The last trace of clean air was gone. Only the bunker's oxygen kept him alive now, and even that felt thin. Like breathing through a straw suddenly. The tunnel twisted and opened into a small chamber, a hidden room deep underground. In the center stood a final door, smooth and silver, marked with strange alien symbols and a glowing panel. Jake staggered forward, pulling Zarin with him. He read the instructions on the panel. Dual DNA scan required. Both must confirm entry. Jake turned to Zarin, whose blue face was pale with pain. They had come this far together, fighting death at every step. But Jake could see the truth in Zarin's eyes. They were both at the edge. Outside, the bunker door boomed. The machines would break through at any second. Jake pressed his trembling hand to the scanner. Zarin did the same, his fingers shaking. The door gave a soft, rising, chima hopeful sound in the darkness. The panel lit up, airlock opening. Emergency supply, 1 oxygen tank remaining. Only 1. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He looked at Zarin. The alien's eyes were wide, shining with fear and hope and something like trust. Jake remembered every hard lesson he'd learned. Survival, sacrifice, and the meaning of being human. Jake's lungs burned for air. He felt weak, dizzy, almost weightless. He wanted to survive. He wanted to go home. He wanted to see his family again. But Zarin was dying too, and Zarin had given him trust. In that moment, Jake knew what he had to do. He pulled Zarin close and forced a weak smile. "Take it. You need to live. Your people need you." He gently pressed the oxygen tank into Zarin's hands. Zarin's eyes filled with tears. "But you..." Jake shook his head. "No time. You get inside. Lock the door. Don't look back." Footsteps pounded above them. The enemy was inside the bunker now, minutes, maybe seconds, before they reached the chamber. Zarin hesitated, but Jake pushed him forward. "Go. Don't let my choice be for nothing." Zarin stumbled into the airlock. As the door started to slide closed, he looked back one last time. Jake stood tall, shoulders straight, trying to be brave, one last time. "Tell your people. Humans can be heroes too," Jake said, voice steady, even as the darkness began to close in around him. The door shut with a hiss. Jake leaned against the cold wall, listening to his own heartbeat slow. The air felt heavy, his vision faded. But he was at peace. Above, the enemy machines crashed into the chamber, lights blazing. Jake smiled, knowing he had done the right thing. And then silence. Inside the airlock. Zarin pressed his back to the cold wall, gasping for breath. The oxygen tank hissed quietly, giving him life. He listened, his pointed ears catching the faint, muffled sounds of chaos behind the door. The walls shook with each blast. Metal groaned as enemy machines surged for Jake. Zarin's hands shook. He stared at the oxygen mask in his palms, at the only thing that kept him alive. He had made it, but the cost was too great. He pressed his head against the wall. Through a small glass window, he saw Jake slumped on the floor, chest barely moving. Surrounded by the flicker of red enemy lights, something inside Zarin twisted painfully. Humans and his kind had been enemies for so long. But Jake had broken that change. Jake had chosen him, a stranger, over his own life. A siren wailed. The airlock lights flashed yellow. Critical breach detected. Evacuate immediately. Zarin's fingers hovered over the panel. He could run now, escape through the tunnels and disappear. He could leave Jake and survive, just like Jake had told him to. But Zarin shook his head. He couldn't do it, not now. He dropped the oxygen tank, grabbed a small medkit from the wall, and slammed his hand on the emergency override. The airlock doors groaned and hissed, opening just enough for Zarin to squeeze back into the chaos. The room was a storm of broken light and shadows. Enemy machines scanned the walls, searching for life. Jake lay on the floor, eyes closed, skin pale. Zarin moved quickly, heart pounding. He darted past a scanning drone, staying low. A laser sliced through the air, missing him by inches. He reached. Jake sighed, dropped to his knees, and pressed the oxygen mask to Jake's face. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then Jake coughed once, twice. His eyes fluttered open. Zarin grabbed the medkit, spraying a clear foam over Jake's wounds, just as Jake had done for him. He held the mask tight, sharing his own oxygen tube, willing Jake to live. Jake stared up at Zarin, confusion and relief. In his eyes, "You came back." Zarin nodded, tears sparkling in the blue light. "No one left behind," he whispered, copying the words he'd heard Jake say earlier. Enemy machines closed in. The alarm screamed. Zarin knew they had only seconds. He pulled Jake up, supporting his weight. Together, they stumbled toward the secret escape tunnel. Zarin slammed his palm onto the final scanner. Using the last of his strength, the door slid open and they fell inside, the tunnel swallowing them in darkness. Behind them, the bunker exploded in fire and smoke. Enemy machines howled, but the tunnel sealed tight in the silent dark. Zarin kept Jake close, sharing every breath until the world above faded away. They were alive, together, against every rule, against every odd. For a long time, there was only darkness. Then, slowly, Jake felt warmth on his skin, a soft, golden light. He blinked, eyes adjusting to a new world. He was lying on a bed, strange but comfortable, inside a bright chamber filled with gentle humming and sweet clean air. He tried to sit up. His body ached, but he was alive. The walls around him glowed with shifting colors, blues and purples, like the sky back home before a storm. Strange plants grew in glass tubes, their leaves shimmering. The air felt different, almost electric with life. Jake heard voices, gentle, musical, not like the harsh commands of his own world. He turned his head. Several aliens stood nearby, their eyes kind, their faces calm. Zarin was there too, his blue skin healed, his wounds gone. He wore a new suit, silver and shining. When Zarin saw Jake awake, a wide smile broke across his face. He hurried over and took Jake's hand in both of his. "You made it," Jake whispered, voice rough with emotion. Zarin nodded. "We both did. Because of you." An elder alien, taller and older than Zarin, stepped forward. He wore a cloak covered in glowing symbols. He looked at Jake with deep respect. "You risked your life to save one of our own," the elder said, his English slow but clear. "You had every reason to run, but you chose hope." Jake looked down, feeling the weight of it all. He remembered the planet's dying skies, the burning in his lungs, the moment he thought he would never see the sun again. Now he was surrounded by beings who should have been his enemies, but instead they were grateful. Zarin turned to the others. "Human gave his last breath for me. He is not our enemy. He is our friend." There was a long silence. Then, one by one, the aliens stepped forward, bowing their heads to Jake. He felt the tension in his chest finally begin to melt. The elder spoke again. "Your act has started something new. Not just for you or Zarin, but for all of us." Jake stood slowly, still weak, but determined. He walked to a window. Outside, the world was different, greener, brighter. The city below was alive with both humans and aliens working together, rebuilding what war had destroyed. Zerg joined him at the window. "We have much to learn from each other," he said softly. Jake nodded. "Maybe it's time to start." As the camera panned back, Jake's story became more than just survival. It became a story of trust, sacrifice, and a new hope where enemies could become allies. And every ending was the start of something better. Jake smiled, feeling the light on his face. For the first time, he truly believed that peace was possible, not just for him and Zarin, but for both their worlds.